Hello and welcome to Lighten. This is an exciting day for me and for all of us. Welcoming you from the studios here in Dallas, welcoming viewers all over the world, particularly viewers in India. This is a very special episode. This is the Republic Day special brought to you from Light to Lighten. And I remember Republic Day as I was growing up, as a child, as a young adult, looking for those candies, seeing India's flag fluttering high. And of course, it's a holiday. And I used to enjoy those parades in Delhi. I still do. Although I'm in US now, I take deep pleasure in watching a Republic Day. At the same time, the journey has progressed to a great extent. What began as a Republic Day celebration in primary school when candies were distributed and it was a colorful event. Today, it's about pausing and reflecting on where India is and where India should go going forward. And this is a very special day. Again, congratulations to India for the Republic Day. And on behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, our think tank, on behalf of myself, on behalf of all Indians and everyone in America and throughout the world, once again, congratulations to India and welcome to this show. We have a very special guest who led India, fought for India, and has sacrificed for India. Someone who believes nation comes first, someone who was willing to lay down his life for the country. Major General Sudhakar ji. His name is immensely popular. He's not only a Major General retired, but he's also a great nation builder today, contributing to several platforms from India to think tanks, to other forums, and to the policy enablement across the globe. And through his involvement, he's been able to translate several goals and dreams that he had about India. And we have a guest who is more than willing to share his vision, his dreams for India, even as we celebrate this Republic Day on 26th of January. Major General Sudhakar ji, welcome to the show. And once again, welcome back to Light to Lighten. I know this is our second podcast with you. And what a great occasion to have you back on our show.
Thank you very much, Guru. It's a great pleasure and honor to be connected once again, and that too on a special occasion like 26 January. For India, it means a lot, and I'm quite aware of the fact that the previous podcast was uh, it was time and again viewed and heard by many people. One of them happened to be Lieutenant General Mandata Singh, retired, settled in Jaipur. It is at his behest I was encouraged to approach you after he had heard the last podcast, in which I had given a suggestion that it's about time India expresses its intent to extend its sphere of influence from Persian Gulf to Mediterranean and from Malacca Strait to South China Sea. So, and also he had suggested that will it be possible for Light to Lighten to undertake a podcast so as to cover the short, medium, and long term goals of India. I am very grateful to you, Guru. You so forthrightly and willingly accepted the request of the retired general. And today we are here reconnecting to make something significant to be contributed to the nation building. And unless you dream big, you will never be anywhere closer to it. Our aim is to apply ourselves as pragmatically, as realistically as possible, and identify the goals which will be relevant from the perspective of short term, medium term, and long term goal. And I must also acknowledge one fact that you are reaching out from Dallas, USA. Very good morning to you and the ecosystem supporting you, Guru. And we are gradually stepping into the late evening hours here in India, in Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Lieutenant General Mandata Singh, a big salute to you from Light to Lighten and on behalf of everyone here in our studio. Thank you for the sacrifices you have made, and thank you both for your contributions and your sacrifice to the nation. Uh, General Sudhakarji, you summed it up so well. Even as we celebrate this Republic Day, it's a great moment to take stock of where we are today as a nation. And India's transformed substantially. From 1947 to 2026 has been an eventful journey. Much water has flown down the Ganges, and India has evolved out of huge problems, huge challenges, all dimensions touching economic, political, geographic, military, and cultural challenges that India has faced. Today, we are at that point where India is confident to look at a future that we wouldn't have had the courage to think of even 15 years back. And that is thanks to the leadership in India and thanks to visionaries like you, who have not only led in the military but who are also leading the thought process to get India lead the world eventually. And thank you for doing that. I know you were in the Indian Army. You've sacrificed a lot. In fact, in our previous podcast, we heard tremendous stories about your sacrifice, your ability to think, lead, and motivate men. I also remember the definition of leadership, which you shared with us. Leadership means leading or motivating people to die. That was your definition of leadership, and what a impactful definition of leadership that is. So, continuing from where we left from that definition, you were in Indian military when India was an underdog, and we were on the defensive. And today we are talking about covering the impact of Indian defense from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea. And today we're talking about not being defensive but leading, not from an offensive standpoint, but from an impact standpoint. So from a soldier's lens, how do you see this journey? What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to India?
Great question. I must compliment you, Guru. Uh, unless we know our history, our roots, we cannot actually select a suitable goal or aim, realistic aim. So I must compliment you for having framed your question well. Let's take our mind back to 1947 when India became independent and it was an underdeveloped country, and there was a huge percentage, almost 70 to 80% of people who were below the poverty line. Population of the country was 35 crores. Literacy was 12%. At places you will find 12 to 17%. The per capita income was $58, around 265 rupees. GDP at that point in time used to be 20 to 30 billions nominal terms and used to be 4% to the global total. Export used to be dominated by raw material in 1947. Armed forces had a strength of 200,000 to 300,000 in 1947. The SDI index in the global order was extremely low, very, very low. The life expectancy was around 32 years, and Indian economy moved from a stagnant colonial era licensed Raj from 47 to 1991. And there was a huge inequality in the society, and the country was an agrarian economy and underdeveloped. So, these attributes, if you compare with what India is today in 2026, after about, say, 78 and a half, 79 years, let's quickly touch upon a few important milestones India has achieved in past 79 years. First and foremost thing, that India has become a major power in Asia. After USA, China, the third major power in Asia is India. This has come out in the international think tank post Operation Sindoor. The percentage of agriculture is still retained by India. We can't call ourselves as a fully industrialized country. We are actually in a stage of work on job. Population has grown from 340 million or 34, 35 crores in 47 to 1.4 billion. Literacy has jumped from 12% to 77%. You will find the bracket in open source from 77 to 81%. GDP has grown from whatever it was at that point in time, around 20 to 30 billion. It has grown to $4.19 trillion. It is the fourth largest economy in the world. The per capita income, as outlook of 2026, has been estimated to be $3,051 in nominal terms and $12,964 in PPP terms by the end of 2026. The export of the country, as reported and estimated till date, has already exceeded $850 billion in 2025 December. That is to include goods and services. The armed forces are the fourth largest armed forces. As far as the global firepower index is concerned, which comes out once in a year, it is rated at fourth in the order of global fire index. It has got 1.4 million active personnel serving in the year of 2023-24. The SDI index of the country, life expectancy, which used to be 32 years in 1947, had jumped to 67.7 years. And the country had jumped to the status of a medium classification of 0.685 in SDR, and the ranking has been rated at 130 out of 193 countries. The transformation which has taken place in India, approximately last 70 and a half to 79 years, the country has got economically liberalized. It is the third largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. The inequality, which is to be huge and large way back in 1947, is gradually narrowing. The poverty level, which was 70 to 80% in 1947, has reduced to 1 to 5% in 2026. So these statistics, they give you an overall view as to where India stands. So any amount of hypothetical or imaginary statement won't actually do justice to the growth story of India and the status of India in 21st century.
While we took on the poverty issue head on, and several governments, and of course, the current government under Prime Minister Modi is doing a great job in addressing that substantially. I wanted to shift our conversation to to the security framework, I know we as a nation are working on national security strategy, right? And we're also looking at uh, doctrine, a military doctrine that will proactively help India to establish supremacy in defense as opposed to being a reactive defense force defending the nation. And as this paradigm shift is happening, as we're seeing it on the ground, we saw a huge demonstration of that in Operation Sindoor as well. What do you think changes on the ground as this shift keeps happening from a military standpoint? And just for the benefit of our audience, General Sudhakarji, this is going to be the beginning of our first part of our conversation on covering your vision for India in short term up to 2030. And I'll talk about this just after this response from you.
Okay. So, since you will be covering the short term, that is for 5 years till 2030, my proposal and thought process and the vision for the country is we need to consolidate. Consolidation means we need to understand where we started from, where are we today, and where do we or the country wants to go to or march up to. So once we know our start point, joining the dots and leading up to our end state objective will be simpler to understand, which I suppose you would be covering. In
Uh,
your question, you alluded to a point called national security strategy. Gone are the days when security is to be interpreted as military security. Now, this paradigm consists of multiple angles. Water is a security threat, energy security, food security, health security, military security, the host of issues which are technological security, so natural resources security, everything is becoming and falling under the paradigm of the national security. I personally feel that if a country of the size of India can have a constitution, it also merits to have some document which formulates the overall security strategy. The security strategy, in its absence, leads to lack of coordination, multiplicity, duplication, and avoidable expense and time delay. There is also an overlapping of responsibility which leads to duplication of efforts. In 21st century, if country of our size is looking to or is ambitious to become a global power by 2047 or earlier than that, it's about time that we need to tighten our belt and we need to look ahead as a country collectively with high-end progressive forward-looking objective for improvement of livelihood, total elimination of people below the poverty level. Our economic prowess must be reckonable in the world order. They must lead us to create leverages and reduce our dependency on everything that we buy from outside. So, therefore, I have identified this slot of consolidation, which highlights a couple of issues. I leave it to you since you'll be covering later. But national security strategy becomes the start point. And no security would have any meaning and substance unless there is political stability. and political stability supported by the economic might and the military might. Also, issues related to the diplomatic finesse, the soft power of diplomacy, and the intelligence or the information that we can generate to safeguard our country in different contingencies. There is a requirement of proactive doctrine, but since your question actually was pointing towards what is it that is going to manifest in the common man or the civilian population
On the ground, yeah.
when we take a jump to answer this question, I would say that the basic fundamental thing which is very sharply visible in the country today is that the critical thinking has dawned in the way of life amongst the population of India. Dur, which took place from the night of 6th 7th May 2025 till 10th of May 2025, it validated the concept of India having migrated from strategic restraint to strategic deterrence. This reflects eye for detail and resilience. And this also highlights the self-confidence of the nation. The country has gone through the journey from deterrence of deniability to deterrence of punishment. And the cabinet committee note,
Right.
which was promulgated on the night of 9th 10th May 2025, amply clarifies and outlines the objectivity and the intent of the country. That an act of terror to be treated as an act of war. Therefore, it puts the country on the threshold which will enable to practice, prepare and prevent, repair and repent. Unless we practice this theory, the meaning of proactiveness will have no relevance. This cabinet committee note, which stated an act of terror to be treated as an act of war, has put the entire nation on a proactive stance. A classic example is
Yeah.
the Delhi bomb blast, which took place on 10th November 2025, had actually been planned to be conducted as serial blasts in multiple cities within India close to the date of 5th 6th December 2025. However, high level of self-confidence and proactive way of life by a police official in Jammu and Kashmir, which is an integral and inseparable part of India, revealed the nexus of a terrorist network consisting of white-collar terrorism, planning for serial blast in multiple cities in the country. The Delhi blast prematurely activated our security apparatus, thereby preventing the serial blast which had been planned to be conducted by the terrorists in our cities. So therefore, the summary of all this, if I have to convey, that the country is seized with the threats which are emerging from western border, the northern border, the eastern flank, that is Bangladesh, and the Indian Ocean region. The bigger threat for the country today is the internal stability. With that, I'll close the answer to this question. Back to you, Guru.
Moving on to the next segment of your vision in the short term. I know during our conversations, you shared uniform civil code, centralized education, scientific temperament. And how do you actually connect these to national power from a defense perspective? And the second part of my question is how critical is internal cohesion and how do you contrast intellectual capital to external power? And this is so much of thought going into this part of your vision for India. I'd like to hear more as to how this will help us in the short term as a nation and what it will do for us to get to 2030 with repeated
Excellent.
success.
So this question essentially is actually leading the country to a medium term. By medium term, we expect to become a middle power. But before becoming a middle power, the consolidation phase of the country must address some of the issues which must find a suitable chapter in the national security strategy. The first and foremost thing is that we have to define our spheres of influence. We have gone past the stage of expressing our areas of interest or sphere of influence from Persian Gulf to Malacca Strait. I think the time has come, I am more than convinced, India, more than asserting its authority and supremacy in the region, extend a hand of friendship and cooperation and assistance in times of criticality to countries well beyond Persian Gulf, as has happened in the recent past. For example, the earthquake which took place in Turkey, India, despite long distance away from Turkey, happened to be one of the leading countries which was present as a first responder with the humanitarian assistance. Similar thing took place towards Myanmar and Thailand. Before any country could respond, India was already there. This could be classified under disaster management. So, therefore, what I am saying is we
Yeah.
need to have our footprints in the extended horizon and sphere of influence if India is looking towards becoming a global power by 2047. I must also stress one fact that India as a country is characterized by diversity. It has got 9 religions which originated in India, out of which 4 are global religions. It has got 22 scheduled languages. 2 of them are official language, nationally accepted as national language. But more than that, around 1,800 or more are the languages which are spoken in our country. There are 5 primary castes. There are 5,000 sub-primary castes. There are 25,000 sub-primary castes based on the occupation. There are 330 million gods and goddesses in the country. There are 28 states or provinces and 9 union territories. There are more than 2,600 ethnic tribes in the country. Uh, there are many diverse uh, castes, creed, religion, language, food habits, and way of life in the country. There are different laws applicable to personal life of human beings: divorce, marriage, property. So, to bring the country in a unified manner and ensure national integration and make sure that the internal challenges are held in a network of progressive, forward looking, integrated kind of a structure, uniform civil code is mandatory. I personally feel the common laws for citizens in India, replacing existing religious personal laws that govern matters like marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption, and maintenance, aiming to provide equality, secularism, and justice by applying these laws for all, regardless of religion, which directly or indirectly has been referred to on Article 44 of Indian Constitution, will enable to create a unified legal framework for personal affairs. This has been successfully implemented, although it was existing in a state like Goa earlier. The Uttarakhand has already put the subject on the roll. It's under implementation. And we have already been indicated that states like Assam, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Assam, these like states, they would soon be undertaking, and followed by UP. Education, as on today, is in the concurrent list. If India has to progress, it must put the education under the center. It no longer can be left at the level of the state or the provinces. We need to have universities of global standards. Look at China, the top 10 universities in the world. China has left many of the Western countries behind, as per the latest report. The focus on the PhD STEM. We need to actually have more number of global scientists. Yeah. Research must be done in a professional manner, and they must be cited in articles and papers internationally. The Atmanirbhar Bharat should be aimed to reduce dependencies. The manufacturing, which was 16.7 in 2014, with an aim to achieve 25% of GDP by 2020, somehow has not taken off in earnest. It has gone back to 15.9% in 2025 if you see the statistics. Although the startup culture, which our Prime Minister has started, we have created an ecosystem with more than 2 lakh startups in the country, which is third largest in the world, is not only creating a sensation, but it has started stimulating the system within the country to integrate with the global chain by producing high quality, global standard products which will find a market in all the countries or maximum countries in the world. The GDP of the country by 2030 we must endeavor to reach a target of 7 to 8 trillion US dollar nominal terms, with a growth rate of 8 to 9% per annum. The per capita, which is expected to cross $3,000 in 2026, we should aim to achieve at least $4,000 to $5,000 by 2030. The research and development, which is getting just about 0.65% of the GDP, must be raised to 2% of GDP. Public private participation from the current level of 37% must go up to reach a target of 40% by 2030. We must develop our social media platforms, servers, internet, Wikipedia, overlapping and all weather surveillance platforms, quantum computing, 6G, artificial intelligence, robotics, public blockchain, energy storage, and multiomics. We need to focus on the space, modular nuclear reactors, mining extraction, processing and production of rare earth elements and semiconductors. The export, which is likely to reach a target of 2 to 3 trillion by 2030 from the current level of $850 billion, which actually forms a share of 2.4% of the global share, we should aim to reach a target of 4.5% by 2030. These are the few important objectives I have outlined for the short term. Now back to you for the next question, please.
Sure. No, that was a great summary of where we need to be and how do we get there. I think just to reinforce for the benefit of our audience, the role 200,000 startups that sprung up in the last few years from India is going to play is huge. The small and medium segment is uh, really positioned and is expected to propel India to the next level in the orbit as we reach the threshold of 11 to 12 trillion dollars GDP. So, General Sudhakar ji, as we move to medium term vision of yours, where you have shared with me that you see India, ramping up to a GDP of about 11 to 12 trillion. It's a great vision to have. I'm sure all the economists and the entire economic vehicle of India will be motivated to get there. But the challenge is really how do we do it, despite all the constraints that we have as a nation, and also from a geopolitical and military standpoint, which you so well covered in our first segment of short term. So the vision is space power, Sudarshan Chakra in place, influence from Europe to East Asia. In military history, has any other nation leapfrogged, leapfrogged growth in such a short time frame? Has that ever happened? And is India too ambitious to look at a 11 to 12 trillion GDP economy that you have in mind? And obviously, you have a plan as well. So, talk to us a little more about that.
Okay, Guru, see, my thought process is today ours is a $4.19 trillion US dollar economy. Okay, more the money, faster it multiplies. Take the example in 2007, India became $1 trillion economy. By 2014, within 7 years, that 1 trillion became 2 trillion. So just look at the comparison 60 years to become $1 trillion economy, 7 years to double. Okay, from 2014 to 2019, it had become 3 trillion. So within 5 years. And had pandemic not been there, perhaps by 2022 or 24, we would have become a $4 trillion economy. But because of pandemic, the ongoing conflicts, supply chain disruptions, price rise of uh, fuel, fertilizer, and food, that's why it got delayed. And we are a $4.19 trillion economy now. I anticipate at the rate of 7 to 8% rate of growth, India is going to very easily become a 7 to 8 trillion dollar US dollar by 2030. Per capita income is likely to touch a figure of 6,000 to 7,000 US dollar by 2035. My focus is the manufacturing must be given due impetus. Starting the startups is one issue, but sustaining the startup and integrating it to the global chain is very, very important. So how do you go about it? My logic and the start point of going ahead in this particular domain is education. We need to focus on education. You compare the Chinese model. The STEM subjects, which we start, let's say, from class 10th or 12th or undergrad, those subjects are being taught to the not the lower KG, but the upper KG onwards in China. The sense and the orientation of the society in India is towards the sociology, towards the philosophy, political science. Okay, maximum people during my time, they used to talk of becoming a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. Engineering is to freeze, it is to stagnate at the level of BTech. Now we need to impress upon people, make a competitive environment, and also encourage people to carry out or pursue PhD in the STEM subject. Let me give you the facts quickly, since time is at premium. If I can cover this important aspect, in 2000, China had just about 9,038 people who did PhD STEM. USA had 18,289. In 2007, China started a Young 1,000 Talents program. In 2010, China had 34,801. USA had 26,076. In 2019, China had 49,498 PhD STEM. USA had been left behind with 33,759. For the first time, India's name came out in the international journal saying only 700 people had done PhD STEM. Out of 700, 70% had migrated abroad and settled as citizens of those countries. In 2025, going by the estimate, China has 77,179, USA has got 39,959. India does not figure anywhere in the international magazines or records. What I'm trying to say, that orientation, technology, and STEM subject must gravitate and become the center of gravity of our education system. That is very, very important. That's what I want to highlight.